Do you want to meet a ghost?
Do you want to meet a ghost?
Do you want to meet a ghost? Do you want to meet a ghost?
Okay, I'm Chelsea.
And I'm Emily.
And this is our introductory episode where we're going to tell you a little bit about ourselves and all the reasons we like horror movies and maybe a little bit about how we got this podcast started. Emily, how did you get into horror movies?
I got into horror movies pretty young. Got into horror movies because my mom really loved horror movies, and we would spend a lot of time together watching horror movies. I mean, I was with my mom all the time, so she would watch a lot of horror movies, and I'd just kind of be there with her. But it's something we ended up finding a lot of joy in. My mom also would tell horror stories, like kind of campfire style stories, when we would hang out with family and friends. And she was very animated in the way she told the stories, and it was always really captivating and
Oh, how cool.
exciting. And that just got me obsessed with horror at a very young age.
What kind of movies do you remember watching with your mom when you were little?
I mean, we watched anything we could get our hands on. We were pretty poor. As soon as things went on VHS, we would be getting the bootleg copies of it.
Nice.
And all the TV stuff. So my favorite movie as a kid was the It movie, the made-for-TV version,
Yes.
two-parter with Tim Curry, which is still one of
Who
my
you
favorites.
love.
I mean, it's still one of my favorites. I remember I got in trouble for showing that to my neighbor friend, and her family was really religious and strict conservative to the point where she couldn't even watch SpongeBob.
Oh,
and
no.
she comes over and I'm like, hey, you want to watch my favorite movie? We're like 8 or 9. She's like, yeah. And I put It on for her, and she sits in front of the TV with like her mouth hanging open, just fixed to the TV. And then her parents calls my parents and lets them know she's not allowed to watch movies like that, and she's been having nightmares about Pennywise.
I love that.
Yeah. And I remember when the Blair Witch Project came out on VHS, I think I was like 6 or 7, and that one really scared me to the point where I didn't want to go to bed at night. And I remember
a scary movie.
it was, especially for a little kid. I think that one was very scary. And my dad would just be like, why are you upset? The movie's not real. Nothing's real. There's nothing to be scared about. Anytime when I was a little kid, I'd watch movies and I felt myself getting scared, I'd just remind myself, this isn't real. This isn't real. I didn't really get too scared with them. They were always more of a comforting thing for me than a scary thing for me. Like just an escape from reality. I was very sheltered, did not go out much or have many friends. I just kind of sat at home and watched TV and movies all day and tried to get away from my dad, who was an absolute terror. And he hated horror movies, so maybe that was part of it too.
Oh.
Like me and mom just escaped to our horror movies, and he would just be doing his own thing, leaving us alone. So
I just want to say it's really funny to juxtapose you being like, yeah, I watched the Blair Witch Project and I was scared and my dad just said it wasn't real, because that's the one movie that was marketed as if
I know.
as if it was real.
I know. And as I was writing this down, I thought about how funny that was, that people actually thought that was real. And here's my dad being like, it's not real. Don't be stupid. Like telling it to like a 6-year-old. And it's like fooling full-grown adults.
Exactly. Yeah. And I remember, like, I didn't see the Blair Witch Project till a few years after it came out, because we're close in age. I think I'm just like a year older than you are.
Yeah.
But every time someone asks me like what's the most scary movie to me, or what movie scares me, like the Blair Witch Project is it is on that list. And it doesn't scare me to the point that it like haunts me, but it's one of those movies that does actually elicit some kind of reaction from me deep inside. Like it does unsettle me a little bit. Maybe it's just because I do like hiking and the outdoors and folklore. Like it just hits a lot of things for me, the Blair Witch Project.
It's a really great movie. So how did you get into horror movies?
I think my progression into horror movies was really gradual, actually, because I remember growing up and loving anything weird, anything creepy. So, like, growing up, I liked to watch Are You Afraid of the Dark? So Weird was another one.
Mm-hmm.
Loved So Weird. Loved that show so much. Read Goosebumps, read any kind of like haunted stories I could get my hands on. And I always knew I wanted to like horror movies, but I think when I was younger, they did scare me a little. And my mom was kind of, always kind of a horror fan, not the kind that like would watch them like all the time. The first quote horror movie I ever saw in the theater was The Village. And I was in like 6th grade and I went with my mom. I liked seeing that in the theater. I mean, I know it's not regarded as the best movie ever, but everybody has that first horror movie you saw in the theater, and that was mine.
Oh, that's awesome. Actually, that movie came up recently, and I don't know how true this is, but I heard that M. Night Shyamalan lived in Freeland, Pennsylvania for a minute, and that the woods in The Village is based off of the woods near Freeland.
Well, that's scary.
So I heard that recently. I haven't looked into it or done any research how based it or true it is, but that's what I heard. I'm like, wow.
I mean, he does love Pennsylvania.
That's a great first horror movie in the movie theater in Pennsylvania to watch.
It's true. No, it's true. Yeah, because he, if anybody likes setting their movies in Pennsylvania, it's that guy. And I just think the story of that is kind of interesting. Yeah, I don't know. Weird movie. I mean, still not the best movie ever, but like the first memory I have of seeing one. And yeah, and then as I got older, I just started watching like more and more and would watch them with my friends. But honestly, more than watching them with my friends, I would usually watch them by myself because I feel like I didn't have a ton of friends that were into them. I know we watched some at your house, like when we would hang out, but like overall, I feel like I was watching them by myself. But yeah, I don't know. Movies like you, I find myself watching a lot of movies and TV shows, and I don't know. It's just the way I like to spend my time, I guess.
Would you say it's a source of comfort for you?
Yeah, definitely. It's what I always reach for. And I feel like I'm weirdly at the point now where like I almost don't know what to watch anymore. If you see like a top 100 list or whatever, like cuz I look at those on Letterboxd sometimes to try and get some ideas of stuff to watch, and I'll be like, I've seen virtually everything on this list, like, and I know there's a lot of deep cuts and I know there's a ton of stuff to watch, and you'll never run out of stuff to watch, but like sometimes I'm just like, I really think I've seen most of the heavy hitters. But then again, before we did this intro episode, we did about 6 episodes that we recorded, and I think 2 or 3 of those I hadn't seen before we recorded the episode, so there's always new stuff to discover.
And that's one of the awesome parts about this podcast too, all the new things we're discovering about all these horror movies along the way. That's been very enjoyable.
What do you like about horror movies specifically?
I think what I like most about horror movies is kind of the fantasy aspect of it. Like a horror movie, for the most
reality,
part,
but not really reality.
Right. A horror, like no matter what you're going through in real life, like you're not being hung upside down getting cut in half by a clown. It kind of makes me feel a bit better about my life in a way, because I'm like, I don't have to deal with all these things. I just love I like a captivating story, and I feel like horror movies they just hook me. It's just it's very exciting, and also it like evokes some type of emotion sometimes too. Like I like those kind of things as well.
We just want to feel something,
Yeah.
I don't know. I like you said, like it's comforting to me, and it's just something that's so fascinating to me. Like, what are the darkest things in someone's mind that they can put to the screen? And also another thing I find interesting about it is like all the changes we go through as a society and what movies come out of that, because I feel like after the first or second year of the pandemic, there were a ton of horror movies coming out. You could credit to the, isolation and people writing and people being creative and getting ready to make something, but Also, I think just when we're in dark times, or anybody in dark times anywhere, a way to cope with that for a lot of people is to create something even darker, or darker in a different way, or an allegory to whatever that is that they're experiencing. I like it from that. I think about that perspective of it a lot too.
Absolutely. And that kind of pushes it into art territory.
I just want to say I'm so glad we're doing the podcast. This has been in the works for at least 9 months, 10 months even by this point. We've been doing a lot of talking, a lot of learning about things, teaching ourselves about things. Have some episodes recorded already that we're going to start releasing. Have, told our friends about it, made our little social media profiles and stuff. But it's really been a long few months. But I look forward to every time we work on it or talk about it or record for it.
Absolutely. It's been a long time coming, for sure. Me and Chelsea, we started reconnecting again by going to the drive-in movie theater that plays mostly horror movies. And then we would get together and just talk about horror movies and kind of not be able to shut up about it. And Chelsea, your horror movie knowledge is very impressive.
Thank you.
I don't know anyone else that knows more about horror movies. I mean, movies in general, but horror movies in particular. I have never met someone that's watched as many horror movies as you, or like know so much about horror movies. Like, you're just this incredible resource of horror movie knowledge. And
thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. I mean, it's true. Thank you. So when you mentioned you want to do a podcast, and I kind of looked at you and I was like, I want to do a podcast too.
Yeah, I loved that. I was all in there, but I was so excited that you kind of said like you always wanted to have one, and you also just love movies and horror movies, and
yeah,
I was just so excited we made that connection, and now we're making it work.
And it was just kind of like this crazy idea at first. We're like, let's do it, and then we're like, no, really, let's do it. Like, what would we need to actually do this? And then that's how we got the ball rolling. Neither of us knew anything about podcasting. We kind of had to learn this whole process by scratch, and that's really why it took so long. And we're still learning a lot. Like, just a warning, in some of the episodes, the audio quality is not the best,
but we have it down now, as you can tell, hopefully, by listening to this one.
It's something that has definitely improved a lot and continues to improve. We're filming outside of our houses. We're not together when we're filming these episodes. We're in our homes because we don't live that close to each other.
I think we make it work, though.
We do. We have made it work. It was a lot of fine tuning, and like also something cost effective. So using all these free programs and things like that, which has been so much fun to learn, because I love podcasts and I really wanted to learn more about audio engineering, and I'm getting able to do that, which is great. So it's just been all around a great experience so far. And I'm really looking forward to seeing where this goes.
Yeah, and I appreciate how technically minded you are and how much you do actually enjoy the editing and like the techie aspects of it, because I don't really have that in me. So I just really appreciate all the work that you put into that and how much you're learning about it.
Oh, no problem.
And you're also so good at, I feel like every time we talk about this, we always come away with like our little assignments of the next steps to take. I'm not usually like that, so I think you bring that out of me, which I really appreciate.
That's awesome. I'm so bad at getting things done if I don't have a goal. And so like I need a specific date to be like, we're gonna film on this day. I need to get my shit together before this day, and
it works.
It works, and it ends up happening like coming together kind of last minute. I need that little that little push. And thank you for doing all of the movie summaries, because I'd be so bad at doing that.
That's my strength in this, I guess, is I like writing and I like putting stuff together like that. So I definitely enjoy doing the summaries.
It turned out to be a very great partnership and a great balance.
I know, it's so great. I'm so excited. So my next question for you is, what are the things that scare you in a movie? Like, what are the things that add up and just make your skin crawl, or like stuff you don't want to watch? Like, what are the things that scare you or unsettle you?
I have a thing about nail horror.
Ooh.
Like body horror, specifically the type of body horror is fingernails and toenails like popping off
Ooh.
or like getting crushed or something. That comes definitely from some trauma. When I was a little girl, I did horseback riding. And one day I was brushing my horse in the stable and he stepped on my foot and my toenail like fell off. And
No.
I didn't tell anyone about it because I was scared I was going to get in trouble. And I actually blocked that out for a few years, and that memory came back to me. So yeah, my toenail grew back, in case you're wondering.
Okay, good. I'm very glad.
Yeah, so that one, I mean, the Achilles heel thing has always been something that gets me.
Oh
That I
yeah,
will,
you get
like,
that twice in House of Wax.
Yes. That was great. But those are two things that I have to like look away. There's not much else. The other thing that gets me is anything that leaves a deep well of depression and hopelessness in me.
Mm-hmm.
For example, Hereditary, when his sister dies in that horrible way, and then he can't admit it or doesn't want to accept it, so he just goes on autopilot and ignores it, and something about that ruins me and sends me into a deep depression for a couple days at least. So any type of horror movies that give me that just deep sense of like, oh no.
Yeah. I have a thing with movies, like when it's like a movie you're watching, and Hereditary and that didn't do it to me specifically, but kind of just the idea of a movie, somebody doing something, and then instead of doing the right thing, they keep doing the wrong thing, and it gets worse and worse and worse and worse, like unimaginably worse. So I think Hereditary is kind of an example of that, but like oh gosh, like that's the stuff that gets to me. Like when it's just like, it's so easy to get out of that situation if somebody would just like step away for a second, or, you know, tell somebody what they lied about, you know, or something like that. So easy to get out of it, but they choose not to get out of it, and it just keeps going and getting darker and darker.
Yeah, that sinking feeling in your gut, like that sick feeling. Ugh. Yeah, so what scares you in a movie?
So I was thinking pretty deeply about this. Going back off the Blair Witch Project, I wish a movie made me feel something so much that I was actually terrified, but they don't. But the closest that you can get to that for me is something like the Blair Witch Project. Like I always think of that scene when they're in the tent and the tent's shaking because there's things shaking the tent and making noise outside the tent. I don't like that at all. That creeps me out. So any kind of like woods or isolation gets to me. Also, the other movie that I think of when I think of movies that actually just like scare me, and it's not exactly a horror movie, so nobody has to come at me, but Fire Walk with Me. That is a movie that really just makes me feel just such deep feelings. It scares me, but a big point in that movie that scares me and unsettles me is just the betrayal. Laura Palmer just constantly experiencing like betrayal of those close to her, especially someone that is so close to her. You know, here, sorry for the 30-year-old spoiler here, but you know, experiencing the betrayal of her father being evil. That gets to me. And also, the other thing that gets to me is when the violence is too realistic or like really sudden. Another example I think of with that is, so in Point Break, it's not a horror movie, it's not scary, but at one point in that movie, there's this scene that's just so violent. And I remember watching that for the first time, and to me it was just such an abrupt tone change in my head. Okay, I'm just watching this average movie, and then all of a sudden like the shit just hits the fan. That's something that always catches me by surprise. Or like something else I would think of is Eli Roth's Thanksgiving, the violence in the shopping center at the beginning of the movie. Like to me that's such realistic violence because that's something that unfortunately happens every day in America. So something like that that's just very realistic and just very brutally violent, even though it's Eli Roth and there's just like silly kills and dumb kills and whatever. Just something like that that just feels too real to me. That's stuff that always unsettles me.
Those are some great movies. I haven't seen Thanksgiving. That one's on my list, but
we saw it in the theater. I'm glad I did because I don't think I'd be watching Thanksgiving in January, February, March, or April. So You know?
That's very fair. And Fire Walk with Me, that was very sickening. That ending, it was good. It was the most horrific thing that I feel like that could have happened.
And I
Yeah.
think, unfortunately, like as women, I think we might see that movie in a different way than a lot of people do if they don't have the experiences we might have necessarily had. I just think of Laura Palmer. Like, Laura Palmer is one of my favorite characters, and I just think of how nothing ever went right for her. Nothing was ever going to be good for her. She was never able to have a good life because everything just went wrong in the most sad or brutal way possible. Not like I can fully relate to Laura Palmer seeing a young woman on the screen in those positions. I don't know, there's just something that makes me think very deeply about that movie more than some people might, I guess.
No.
I will say I think that's one of the movies that don't really fuck up the portrayal of that experience. I don't feel like I'm being talked down to when I'm watching like Laura Palmer's life go terribly, if that makes sense. Because in some movies they tend to feel that way, like, why are you rehashing these experiences in this way that doesn't make any sense? I don't know, I just find Laura Palmer to be very authentic and her story just to be so sad. I hope that made sense.
That made total sense. Like, as you go through times in your life as a woman in society where it kind of feels like everything's going wrong and the world's out to get you, and there are moments where that feel hopeless like that, and you're somehow able to pull yourself up out of that, but Laura Palmer was not able to do that, and it just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. And for some people, that's how it is.
She's just such a tragic character.
Yeah, very
I have such a
tragic.
soft spot for tragic characters. You're one of those people that it just feels like she never had a chance. But anyway,
So
sad discussion.
so sad. Rip Laura Palmer. I should get like one of those framed pictures of her, like from the
Yes.
hang it on my wall or something.
Her prom picture.
It made me sad.
Or was
every
it
day.
I think it was a prom picture.
It looked like it.
So did you make your list of top 3 or top 5 movies?
Yes, I went a little list crazy, but that's okay. I like lists.
We're
So
good.
I started out with a top 3 horror movies, not thinking I could do a top 5, and then I ended up doing a top 5 anyway.
Nice.
So, and I haven't done this in a while, so this was really fun to do top lists again, an updated one. So for my top 5 horror movies, I have Alien, The Thing, It, the made-for-TV version. It's still in my top 5. I've got Coraline,
Nice.
and I put on there Shutter Island. During this podcast, we have this kind of rule, right, Chelsea? Because I've talked to you about this, about what is considered horror. I guess it's just anything that you watch and you feel like is horror.
That's always been my rule of thumb. Like, I'm never gonna tell somebody that they can't call a movie horror if it unsettled you or scared you in any way. If it feels different than something in the mainstream, to me, it's a horror movie. And if you want to put Shutter Island on your list of horror movies, anything somebody considers horror, I accept as a horror. You know.
And I like that. I like that. Just like people like what they like. Don't try to gatekeep people. Just, let them vibe with what they got going on. So yeah, I'll put Shutter Island on there, and that's my top 5. Do you have a top 5?
I do. And I like your top 5 because I can see a connecting thread in there, because I can see the connecting thread of Coraline and Shutter Island kind of have this fantasy element, I want to say, to them, and then the other movies sort of have this science fiction element to them.
Yeah.
And I just really appreciate your top 5 because I can see how they all connect. Like, it's a very symbiotic list. Like,
And that's funny you say that, because my top 3 genres are horror, sci-fi, and fantasy, and I will watch anything, any type of cross genre movies, anything in those categories. I'm all for that, but horror is my first love.
Yes, horror is the first love, and everything else kind of comes out of that, I guess.
Yes.
So my top 5 often changes, but some of these are definitely standbys that are always there. But I hate saying a top 5 because, like, I don't know, in 2 years my top 5 might be different. But anyway,
and then someone mentions a movie and you're like, fuck, that's a good movie. Should that be in my top 5?
I think one of my favorite movies, like probably my number 1, is and will always be Donnie Darko. Because I remember seeing it Darko in high school, and it just hit me in a way I can't even describe, and
Oh.
it's always been a comfort movie to me, even though it's so depressing. It's so depressing, it's so messed up, but it has,
Oh.
like, a great soundtrack. Such an easy movie to watch in that to me, it's a lot like Scream, where I can just watch it 1,000 times and enjoy it and also still find something new to appreciate about it.
And that movie hit me hard too when I watched it. I think I was in like 5th or 6th grade.
Mhm.
And I had such a crush on Jake Gyllenhaal from that movie. That was when I made my first like email address and usernames and stuff. And it was always XOXJG. His initials. With hugs and
I
kisses.
love that. I love that for you.
Because of his character in Donnie Darko.
Love it. Oh my god.
It was like fanfic territory. Like it was like he was like
Amazing.
my fantasy boyfriend in my head.
Amazing. I love that so much.
So I understand that, Chelsea. I really do.
You know, if there's something about Jake Gyllenhaal, I will say he's in a lot of amazing movies.
Mhm.
Like a lot of his movies are just so excellent, and I do
Yes.
consider Donnie Darko one of his best works, honestly. But
Mhm.
I used to always cite like Dawn of the Dead as one of my favorite movies. I think it might be fluctuating out of my top 5. That's always been a movie I really liked because that's another movie that to me when you watch it, it just feels so tight. Similarly to how I feel about like Scream and Donnie Darko, it's just like such a well-oiled movie in my opinion. The way like it was so different when it came out, you know, in the 70s, which I wasn't around for, obviously. Love Dawn of the Dead. And then I guess my others on this list are Near Dark, of course, The Wicker Man, and Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Honorable mention, I fucking love House of Wax. That's my honorable mention. And kind of like how yours all connect, I feel like mine all connect because they're like either folk horror or weird backwoods people. I guess Donnie Darko and Dawn of the Dead are the outliers, but I feel like there's definitely connection with my other movies.
Absolutely. The folk horror vibe is there. I think they're just very specific to your background, like the backwoods thing, and then like the Donnie Darko is like
Emo
emo,
and
yeah,
dark, you know.
right, emo,
Perfect.
dark, edgy. You know, nobody gets me.
Edgy Jake Gyllenhaal in a skeleton sweatshirt while Born the Bunnyman plays in the background.
Yeah,
Just
there's
perfect. Did you make a list of your top 5 actors?
Yes, this one was really fun to come up with. I've never thought about this before. I have here Tim Curry, Hugo Weaving, Gary Oldman, Ethan Hawke, and the new up-and-comer Mia Goth. I'm gonna put her up
Yes. And God, I love
Obsessed.
Ethan Hawke.
there. Oh,
Yes, but Mia Goth is amazing. She is so good.
yeah. I came up with this list by thinking about people who play really diverse characters,
Yes.
people who are virtually unrecognizable in some of their roles,
Uh-huh.
people who I would watch any movie
With them in it.
with them in it. Yeah, as long as I know they're in it, I'll watch it.
So who's Hugo Weaving? I don't know if I know who that is.
Oh, Hugo Weaving, I think one of his biggest roles was Elrond from The Lord of the Rings, and then he's the agent in The Matrix, the
Okay.
antagonist to Keanu Reeves' character, which, by the way, The Matrix and Lord of the Rings are in my top 5
Yes,
non-horror
those movies are just so you.
They are in my ultimate top 5 non-horror movie lists. So
What are your
Hugo-
other top 5 non-horror movies?
A lot of these in my top 5s are like series, like Lord of the Rings, for example. Like I can't just pick one of those movies. To
Right.
Put it in. So I'll count the whole
You can
thing.
pick a franchise. Yeah.
The whole franchise, the whole thing. So I got Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, The Matrix, Kill Bill, and Spirited Away. I was thinking about Kill Bill and Spirited Away. They've always been on my list.
Mm-hmm.
And they're really decent, but I haven't been watching them as much as I used to. So I'm wondering if I should update my list there.
Yeah, they still count as part of your list.
But a lot of those I watch all the time for comfort.
Yeah.
And they're like movies that as soon as I'm as soon as they're done, I want to rewatch them all over again. Like, I have this, like, emptiness inside of me, and I'm like, I need to do this again.
They're your comfort movies.
Do you have any top movies, like, outside of horror or general?
See, the thing is I don't think I have necessarily any top favorite non-horror movies. I have plenty of movies like that I like, but I don't know if they'd make it in my top 5. But I feel like I have like top television franchises, I guess, which I guess counts. But I don't know, a lot of these are horror adjacent. Like, I love the X-Files, which is horror adjacent for sure.
Yes, X-Files is great.
I like Game of Thrones, A Song of Ice and Fire a lot. The gore in House of the Dragon is as good of any gore you'll see in a horror movie, so I feel like there's just still crossover there. So
television has come a long way.
Yes. It's interesting the way things are even formatted now, where it's like we've gone from TV shows that were 30 episodes a season to now TV shows that are like 8 episodes a season, but each episode is like a mini movie. It's weird how the things can shift like that.
It's like now TV shows, they're more interested in telling a good and complete story instead of how long can we stretch out this series if it's doing well. And I think Breaking Bad was the show that changed that part of television. And probably also the move from cable networks to streaming.
I can see that, yeah.
So do you have top actor?
Yeah, Bill Paxton.
Bill
1 through 5, Bill Paxton. Of course I've seen like Bill Paxton in movies my whole life, because if you think of all the popular 90s movies, that anything that runs on TV, you know, Twister, he's in Twister, whatever. But the movie I saw like as, you know, a full-blown adult where I was like, oh my god, I'm in love with that guy, was the movie Mortuary, which I don't know if we've talked about, but have you seen it?
I have not seen it, and you have definitely recommended this to me before, and I know I need to see it.
His character in that, he's just plays such a clean cut, oblivious, weird nerd that's like the son of a funeral director. And it's a messed up movie, but I feel like that's the movie that I saw that I'm like, wow, I really just have an appreciation for him. By this point, I've seen a lot of his movies, and like you said on your list, like your criteria of people that have like a really varied capacity for performance or like looks or whatever. To me, he's one of those actors for sure. He's played so many different characters. He's looked so many different ways. But he is my favorite actor. I started collecting every movie I could that he's ever appeared in on VHS and DVD. But I don't buy them new. I just kind of find them when I find them.
That's awesome. How many of them would you say you have?
The tapes are my main collection. I mean, there's the easy ones. So there's Twister. There's that submarine movie he was in that like you find all the time.
Oh, I love Twister. That was one of my favorites growing up. Like, anytime it was on cable TV, I would be watching it.
Yes. And, you know, you always find a tape of Titanic at the thrift store. I have actually found the ones that I wanted most. So I wanted most to have a copy of Mortuary. So I have one of those. Awesome. He's also in the movie Butcher Baker Nightmare Maker. And he's not a main character. He's just like this shitty bully character in it. But Butcher Baker Night, it's a great, like, so you haven't seen it?
No.
Alternate title is called Night Warning. Whoa. I think you would like it. It's kind of nutty. It's slashery, I guess. But it's a wild movie, so he's in that. So I have a copy of that, which is probably the hardest one to find and the most expensive. Probably upwards of like 80 or 100. Wow. I did buy one on eBay. But I would say I have at least 20 or 25 on tape, but there's still more to find. And that probably covers all the ones he's like a main character in.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I have a problem.
No,
I just love him so
you
much.
have a cool hobby. It's not a problem.
Him so much. So sad that he's been gone I think he passed away in 2017. And I always just wonder, like, you know, what he'd still be making, because I'm sure he'd still be working if he was still around. There is this one I have on tape, so it's called Pass the Ammo, and it's a 1987 movie, and it's a spoof of like televangelists. But Tim Curry's in it, and so is Bill Paxton. So maybe you need to watch it because Tim Curry's in it.
We have got to watch that one. That's great. Oh my
It's not a horror movie. It's just a ridiculous movie, but they're both in it.
Are they both televangelists? Because I could see them both pulling that off pretty well.
I think Tim Curry's the ringleader. You know, while I was watching that, it was like right after I watched The Righteous Gemstones.
Oh, I wanted to.
And
How was
have you seen The
that?
Righteous Gemstones?
No, I wanted to see it. Is it good?
It's decent. I think other people liked it a lot more than I did. I mean, Walton Goggins is in it, and he's great. He's so great in it. But yeah, it's decent. But yeah, Pass the Ammo is just it's really slow and really boring, unfortunately.
Hmm.
So I don't even know if I fully made it through the movie when I watched it. But yeah, they co-starred in that movie together. Oh, and my other favorite Bill Paxton role, of course, is Severin in Near Dark.
Mm-hmm. Which we do cover that movie. So
Yeah, you'll be hearing me drool over him in the new episode. The thing I like about him as an actor is like it just seems just like with like a dog with a bone. Like he would just like sink his claws into something and do it to the best of his possible ability. Kind of just seemed like he would not say no to anything, but not in a bad way. But like he would always be up to whatever challenge people would give him.
But he adds so much to the movies he's in.
Mhm.
Like he just takes it up to
He does.
He makes it a better movie. And that says a
does.
lot about his acting skill.
Imagine Aliens without him. You can't.
Mm-mm.
Okay, sorry about my aside about Bill Paxton. I'm done now.
It's okay. We get the Paxton mania.
See, the thing is like I feel so alone in this because you know how there's like always like an Instagram or a Twitter or like a Tumblr where people are like salivating over a specific actor.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have those people to follow, and I don't have those people in my life.
Really? There's no big Bill Paxton thirst trap instas?
Like there probably is, but I haven't found them.
Hey, you guys listening out there, if you know of any Bill Paxton
Email me, please.
thirst traps, please email it to us at doyouwannameetaghost@gmail.com.
Which is actually definitely our email address.
Yes, it is.
So you can email us.
Yes, feel free to email us, seriously, with anything, recommendations.
Your thoughts.
Advice,
just don't bully us. I don't want to be
thoughts.
bullied. Thank you.
Yeah, if you bully us, I'm going to have to bully you back. And I'm going to take that as a challenge and,
Yes.
want that. Because I'm...
You got a mean streak. No.
No, I like have this like troll brain from growing up on the internet where like if someone's trying to troll me and make me uncomfortable,
You're just going to get them way worse.
yeah, I take that as a challenge to out troll them. You could do it if you dare.
So you made a list of top 5 directors, right?
Okay, so I have top 3 horror movie directors, and then I have some other non-horror directors that might have done some horror movies. So for my favorite horror directors, I'm gonna say David Cronenberg.
Yes, we love Cronenberg.
Oh, yes. And I actually need to watch more of his movies because I just started making my way through his movies later last year. So I still have lots of Cronenberg to watch. He is the daddy of body horror.
It's true.
So good. And, I like The Thing. That's not David Cronenberg, but it's definitely like 80s body horror. I just love the whole 80s body horror thing. And he's the big dog in that category.
He is the big dog.
John Carpenter. I have John Carpenter. So I was Googling horror directors because I'm not always aware of who the director is, and just looking at their movies, and I was like, yes, John Carpenter should be on my list.
Yes.
And then I have my favorite current newer horror director would be Mike Flanagan. Very excited.
What is your favorite Mike Flanagan work?
Midnight Mass.
Oh,
That's
it's
exactly
so
it. Yes. Midnight Mass was incredible. I liked his like Edgar Allan Poe kind of thing he did on Netflix recently.
All of the House of the
Yes.
Usher.
Yes, Fall of the House of Usher. That was great. Hold on, I'm about to Google him because there's definitely more stuff. Didn't he do that Oculus movie?
I believe so. He also did Dr. Sleep, I think. He did, and the Haunting of Hill House, Bly Manor.
Dr. Sleep.
Midnight, the Christopher Pike adaptation. What the fuck was it called? The Midnight Club?
Yeah, yep. He did Dr. Sleep. I really loved that sequel.
I have to watch that still.
I thought it was so great. He did Gerald's Game.
Yeah.
That was on Netflix. He did this movie called Hush. That was from
I
a
like
while
that.
ago. That was one of the first movies I saw of his.
Yeah, me. I think that was the first thing I ever saw that he did.
Hush is a really great movie if you haven't seen it. A good kind of slasher flick.
I heard like wasn't that like in a Netflix original and now it's impossible to find
It
or
was a
something like
Netflix
that?
original, and I have no idea where it is now. I haven't looked for it.
I think it actually got like the contract ran out, and I saw like Mike Flanagan talking about it on Twitter or something like that. But I think the contract ran out, and it at the current moment it might actually not be watchable unless you can find like a bootleg, which sucks.
That sucks. Well, I love Stephen King, and he's doing a lot of
hmm
great Stephen King stuff. I think that's a big reason why I like him. He's gonna do the Dark Tower series. I think he had a falling out with Netflix because he switched over to Amazon.
Oh, maybe the falling out was over Hush. Who knows?
Yeah, it might have been over that. I think Netflix more and more has been pushing their creators to do more of like a cookie cutter kind of like
Right.
formula. I notice everything kind of follows a formula, and it's something that is more appealing to more people, like. So I think there's maybe trying to stifle his creativity a little bit. Maybe that's the drama I'm making up in my head. It could be not that at all. So but in my head I'm like, yeah, Netflix is going to crap, and Mike Flanagan's great, and he's not taking it, so he's going somewhere else.
I think I have a contentious relationship with Mike Flanagan because, like, I'm so wishy-washy about him. Like, there's certain stuff I like a lot that he did. Some other stuff to me personally, and I'm not saying it's bad. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm not saying it's low quality or whatever. But I just find a lot of it, like, for me personally, like, really, like, contrived. He kind of seems like he shoves a bowl in front of me and is like, here, this is exactly how you need to feel about this, and here's why. Like,
oh yeah,
like kind of like being talked down to in a way, or like I don't know. And then with Midnight Mass, I loved Midnight Mass, but like the funny part of that to me is like I loved the Father Paul thing so much that like I don't even remember what's his name that goes to the island after getting in that car accident while drunk. You know what I mean? Like that character has totally like left my mind. Like the Midnight Mass lasting aspect to me was like the stuff surrounding Father Paul specifically.
The stuff that he does in like The Haunting of Hill House or Blind Manor. Some of that stuff bores me a little bit. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah,
it does.
I do like his enjoyment for like literary adaptations, though. I think that's really cool. I think he like leans towards those.
I see why he's a huge fan of Stephen King. Like, Stephen King's great at writing characters. Mike Flanagan does a lot of character heavy stuff too. I can see what you're saying. Like, it feels like a scripted character. It doesn't, like, Stephen King writes characters that feel real. And his characters, they're not like, as dynamic.
I don't think Mike Flanagan's like a bad creator in any way. He just doesn't mesh with my taste, I guess, like most of the time.
That was it for my top 3 horror directors. I have non-horror directors. I've got, and they've done some horror too. I've got J.J. Abrams. He did, like Cloverfield, but I like all of this stuff. Christopher Nolan, Steven Spielberg, and Sofia Coppola.
Nice. That's a good list. And at the same time, I feel like it's very you, because I can see the connections too with like obviously like I haven't seen Cloverfield, but I know the general gist of it. I feel like that's just a very Emily movie.
Oh yeah. The found footage, the monster thing. Yeah, right up my alley. How about you? What's your favorite director?
I didn't really construct a top 5 because there's directors I like, but I feel like I don't really rule my taste by directors. I really like Cronenberg stuff. I really like Argento stuff. I guess if I had to pick a favorite, I'd probably pick George Romero, just because I think a lot of his movies have a really cool human touch to them. No matter what it is, there's just still, in a way, how like Mike Flanagan tries to evoke like emotion in his movies. I feel like George Romero actually does that for me. Because like in a way, like there's some of them are cheesy, some of the makeup's horrible, some of them are just gross or gnarly. I remember watching like Day of the Dead after having finally watched all of The Walking Dead, which I hadn't watched until a couple of years ago. And I had seen it when it first came out. I saw the first season, couldn't really stick with it, whatever. But after rewatching Day of the Dead, I think these puzzle pieces just fell in place for me, where Day of the Dead kind of has those human problems and human touches very similarly to the Walking Dead show, like the way that it kind of revolves around the people and their stories. One non-horror movie by Romero that I really love is Night Riders. So Ed Harris, who I really like, plays the main guy in it, and he and his troupe of friends and coworkers do this thing where they go to Renaissance fairs and they ride dirt bikes, like they joust on dirt bikes.
Oh my gosh.
Which is just such a very oddly specific scenario. But
I would be so hyped to see that like in real life.
I know.
If you told me people was jousting on cycles,
I know.
I'd be there. No, I'd cancel everything.
Yes. Also, Stephen King actually makes a cameo in that movie.
What?
He's a guy just like eating a sandwich while watching the dirt bikes. But similar to other Romero movies, like I think it was filmed in Pennsylvania. That's another guy that just loves Pennsylvania. Tom Savini's in it. He plays like the guy on the opposing dirt bike group. And basically the movie just has this really human story to it. Ed Harris's character's having like these internal struggles. They're kind of all struggling with, do they sell out? Because the dirt bike group kind of gets like an opportunity. I can't remember what year it is. I want to say it's like very late 70s. And another thing in the movie that I appreciate that so Romero was never afraid to talk about racism, which people always point to like Night of the Living Dead with that. But also, so there's two guys in this movie. There's this kind of plot point where the one guy's accidentally outed by a friend as being gay, and they kind of touch on that and actually discuss it. So it's a point of contention between him and the person that accidentally outed him. This guy and this other guy in the movie actually form a relationship. There is an on-screen kiss, which I feel like is just interesting to me because a lot of movies shied away from that, and to show something like that on screen is and was groundbreaking at that time.
Wow.
The two men that are having the relationship, like they're just treated as regular characters instead of a spectacle about their sexuality. They're just two characters in the movie. I don't know, seeing Night Riders for the first time, maybe I've seen it twice. I was just kind of blown away by the whole movie and all the different subjects it touches on and just the humanness of it. So if anybody out there hasn't seen that, and if you're craving some kind of Romero touch that doesn't have zombie guts being ripped open, Night Riders is excellent. Great movie.
That sounds great. Like just very ahead of its time in a lot of ways.
Yeah, ahead of its time and just very human. Like Romero he just really shines in that movie with the portrayal of the closeness of everybody in it. I don't really have a top 5, but I do like Romero movies a lot.
That's awesome. What are your likes and dislikes? Because I don't really have that many dislikes in movies. Like there's a few things that you mentioned that I could kind of agree with. For the most part, I could kind of like, mostly when I watch a movie, I see the good things in it.
I'm the same way. I very much usually pick out the good things. There's very few things I dislike in movies. A lot of my dislikes are personal dislikes. I don't like excessive body trauma, like smashed skulls and stuff. Like it just feels icky to me. I don't like it. Makes me uncomfortable personally. I hinge a lot of my expectations onto what it seems like I'm going to watch. So if I'm going to watch a slasher from 1985, I'm not expecting any kind of grand character development or grand message from anything. But I don't like when I look for something that I think is going to give me that and then it doesn't, and I get disappointed. I think I hold newer movies to a lot stricter of a standard because I do think we should all be improving as time goes on. I think movies should get better and better. So I think I get disappointed by newer movies a lot if I feel like they just kind of missed the mark or didn't make the commentary it seemed like they were going to make, or had like unrealistic characters or an unrealistic story. I guess I also just don't like when they make like a grand leap but in the wrong direction. Trying to think of like a good example of that to me is the Hannibal TV show, which takes so many chances. It does so many ridiculous things. It's kind of artsy feeling. It's kind of surreal and dreamy and strange. And it takes so many leaps, character-wise and plot-wise. And some of them don't land, but I appreciate that they took that leap. So I think in a way, I don't like when movies don't take enough of a leap. I think it's better to attempt to land something ridiculous that might not land than it is to like really play it safe or play it formulaically. And then on my likes, so I really like a cat and mouse movie. I love like
Ooh.
a constant chase in a movie and like the adrenaline of what's going to happen. I love satire. I love when there's like social commentary. I like anything strange, weird, art film like. I do love when characters are built really solidly. I love like a villain redemption.
Ooh.
As for like genres, I like dramas. I like folk horror. I like a traditional slasher. I think one of my favorite decades for movies just tends to be the 70s.
Oh,
I just
yes.
really
I can see
gravitate
that.
towards 70s movies because I feel like it's just an era where a lot of the censorship was kind of lightened up. So a lot of movies just take a lot in
Yeah,
that
a lot
decade.
of nipples in the
A
70s,
lot
which
of
I am a
nipples.
big fan of.
Oh, yeah.
Love nipples. More nipples. Bring
um,
nipples back. Like those nipple bras they used to wear in the 70s. Bring those
they
back.
are coming back.
Are they really?
Yes, I got an ad from like Skims the other day
What?
selling a nipple bra. Yeah, at
I need to get one.
100%.
I'm so happy about that.
I'll try and dig up the link so I can send it to you, but that is 100% coming back.
I love that.
I have a neutral to actually propose here. Something that I feel very neutral about in movies that gets
Ooh.
some people riled up. The stereotype of A24 movies personifying grief in every movie. I'm just neutral on it. I don't care about it either way. And I think some people just hate it so
Oh, really?
much.
Is that a thing
Like,
people hate?
I think it's something that people are just tired of because they've pigeonholed it as that being in every A24 movie, but
Ah.
I'm just here to say I don't care.
I'm in I'm not in that many film communities because I don't like the fandoms a lot of times.
Mhm.
I can get really into the fandom type of category, but I don't interact
But you don't
with
wanna read
other people
Yeah.
in the fandom because they just get so butthurt and angry over the dumbest thing. So there are some A24 fan groups I'm part of. So I'm not seeing the A24 hate or things like that. I do kind of like to hear about what's going on in the horror fandom sometimes from like a third party, like how you're telling me right now. I don't like to be in it.
No, I kind of agree.
And I think that's one of the reasons we made this podcast too, was so that it could be a safe place for people who just enjoy movies and don't want to be judged for enjoying what they like.
We're never going to get too critical about anything. Like, in general, I don't get too critical about movies. And, like, there's a lot that I don't end up liking. I shouldn't say a lot. There's very few things that I don't end up liking. But the thing is, I can recognize that just because I didn't like it, it does not mean it was bad.
Right.
And I think a lot of people don't have that in their head where they're like, well, I didn't like it. It's terrible. I have good taste, so it's terrible. And I'm just like, well, it wasn't for me. And that's it. Like,
yeah. Yeah. Everyone likes
or I didn't like the way it was told or whatever. Like,
yeah, it's okay to dislike things too. We're not saying it's not okay to dislike things, but don't.
And it's okay for me to like absolute fucking garbage. Like, I don't care if you don't like House of Wax, people. I don't care if you don't like that movie. I think it's great.
Well, House of Wax is arguably a very good movie. I think a lot of people love that movie. It's definitely growing from what it was.
I think people like it
first.
nostalgically, but I think people definitely don't regard it as a good movie.
Oh man. Well, I'm glad I'm not talking to these people.
Me too.
Because they're wrong.
Have you seen a movie recently that you just didn't like or you hated?
Not recently, no. The last movie that I hated was The Dark Tower.
Oh yeah, we were talking about that earlier, yeah.
Yeah, they marketed it towards the fans in a very specific way. And then when the movie came out, they did not touch on any of the stuff that they marketed it on. Basically. Right. So that's why that made me angry, and I just love The Dark Tower. So I hope Mike Flanagan does a good job with it. That was very disappointing.
That'll be cool to see.
We were talking about Poor Things, and I wouldn't say that I disliked it or hated it. I did really like it. I just think that it just missed for me. Like, I could see what they were trying to do, and I liked it for the most part. They just like fell short of a few things that didn't completely ruin it, but was very disappointing to me.
I agree. I think I was neutral going in on it. Like I wasn't expecting it to love I wasn't expecting to love it anyway. I guess my takeaway from it was it is one of those things where I held it to a high standard because it's a new movie and I do like that director and I like
Yeah.
Emma Stone. So I think I
Yeah.
was holding it to a really high standard and then it wasn't what I expected it to be. I think it took more of a neutral approach in some ways where I wish it didn't. And I felt like I was just being rehashed things to me personally that I already know or already experienced. I don't want to like turn this into a bummer or anything. I just didn't care for it. And I don't necessarily think it was bad. I think Emma Stone was really good in it. I don't think it's Emma Stone's best performance. I think she's been very, very good in other things that were not Poor Thing. It was kind of interesting because I saw it in the theater and it was a pretty full day in the theater. Like so full that like we ended up sitting kind of in the corner on the top right because most of the other seats were taken. I don't know the last time I went to the
Wow.
theater where like most seats were filled, and it was kind of unusual because it wasn't opening night or anything. We went like on an afternoon, but people were
Wow.
really into seeing it for some reason.
But
I don't want to be reminded of terrible things. I want to
mm.
watch a movie where I don't know, a weird little guy comes out of the toilet and starts killing people. Like that's the kind of movie I want to watch.
Oh my god, yes. Sign me up for that. Like in the Spice Girls movie. That's one of the things I love about the Spice Girls movie. There's like this guy who comes out of a toilet and he's like bald headed.
I didn't know that actually happened.
It did. And then also in that movie, there are like aliens that come to abduct them.
I have to watch this. I've never seen it.
The Spice Girls movie is fucking fantastic. I love it. That's my childhood. Yeah, the guy coming out of the toilet was like traumatizing a little bit for sure.
Definitely.
What was the last movie you saw that you really hated?
I mean, I didn't really like Poor Things, and I didn't like Leave the World Behind.
Oh yeah, that was the one on Netflix. Ethan Hawke.
Oh my god, Ethan Hawke in a bikini. God, loved it.
I kind of disagree with you on this one. I kind of really like that movie. There was one thing about it I didn't really like, which is that it was feeding into this whole like sick fantasy that a lot of Americans have for like some type of civil war breaking out.
Well, that's the thing I didn't like for it because you and I, not to sound like a jerk, but like you and I can watch that movie and kind of be neutral about it. You don't want the wrong person to see that movie because all they're going to see is like, hey, Kevin Bacon's character was right. You should have a stockpile. You should go out your front door with a gun. Like, you should do that. You know, and anybody can make any interpretation with any movie ever. I just felt like the intention of that movie versus what you are given to take away from it misaligned.
It's kind of like in the Poor Things category, right? Where it's like, for me at least, almost there. Then there's just like that one aspect of it where you're like, oh, I don't know about that.
Yeah, like both of those were really a swing and a miss for me. And I don't shy away from things with like political commentary, but I think that's my problem is I don't necessarily like what they provided you with to take away from it. I'm probably not going to go see Civil War, that new movie that's out now.
No.
Because I know I'm just not going to like it. It's going to be similar to Leave the World Behind for me, where I'm like, this is just nothing I want to watch a movie about. I want to watch a movie to escape.
Right.
I want to get away from this shit. And I guess maybe that's the thing about Poor Things too, is like Poor Things didn't feel like an escape.
I see that. Yeah.
Poor Things was just fucking trauma being rehashed.
Hey,
and
here's
it was
a reminder of
not
all the shitty things
like,
about your experience thus far in life.
Exactly. And then I'm like, how did people like this? Because, and I don't mean to sound like a clown, but that's just how I felt about it.
No, that's valid. Like, I can definitely see that.
Leave the World Behind was definitely an uncomfortable thing to explore for me personally. Also, I guess we should explain what it is if nobody knew what it was. But basically, it's a story about a family's on vacation. Another family shows up, says it's their house. They have to learn to trust each other because shit just hit the fan. I don't remember. I think the internet and power was out or something being bombed. I don't know if something was being bombed. Yeah. All the self-driving cars glitched and were all crashing into each other. Just everything hit the fan. It was a realistic beginning of the apocalypse for the year 2023 or 2024.
You know, a lot of people that hated that movie, they said they hated it because they thought the ending was stupid. The reason why you don't like that movie makes a lot more sense to me. than someone saying, I don't like it because I don't like how it ended. I thought that was stupid. How did you feel about the ending? Because I really like the ending of the little girl in the house just wanting to watch her show.
I mean, I'm partial to physical media, so I'm just glad she found a DVD of Friends.
I love that ending. I was like, girl, I feel you. Like,
Yep.
that's what I'd be doing too. If the shit was ending, I'd be like, give me my favorite show. I'm
Yep.
staying in my room. I don't care.
Yep. Very relatable. I did like that. Before we end, I do want to shout out our logo designer. So as you can see on the podcast cover, we have a very cool little cover with two ghosts in a TV set, and it's like very 60s, 70s, vintagey style. So friend of the podcast, Nick, designed that for us. So he's been working on some logo design. He's also a musician. His band is called Radlands. And if you're a fan of dark, sad, angry indie rock, you should definitely check them out. If you wanted to follow him, see more of his work, you can follow him on Instagram at nduffydaily, DAILEY, or Radlands Music. So definitely check that stuff out. And we're very, very thankful for this awesome podcast cover.
Yes, thank you so much, Nick. The artwork was so great. We love it so
Everything
much.
we wanted.
Everything and more, I'd say. Fantastic job. So our first episode is going to be released on Wednesday, May 1st, and that is going to be a double feature. So,
Ooh, we love a double feature.
oh yes. So stay tuned for that. And then our schedule will be every 2 weeks. We will be releasing episodes on Mondays every 2 weeks after that.
So like we mentioned before, we do have an email address, which is doyouwannameetaghost@gmail, I think we said.
Yes.
And that seems to be our handle on every website that it could fit. So you can follow us on all of those as well.
Yes, we're on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook.
That's it for now, I think.
Yep, that's it.
Thank you guys for listening to our little introduction. I hope you got to have a good feel for the things we like. And like I said, I think we're a really cool balance here because of obviously we like all genres and subgenres, but I really like the way you kind of lean sci-fi. I kind of lead like traditional slasher. I think that's cool.
Yeah, between the two of us, we cover a lot of horror ground. So that's really awesome.
May your DVDs never be scratched.
May your VCR never be hungry.
May the film reel never break.
Thanks for listening. Stay tuned for more.